I'm really glad to be back in Moscow. I was here for the first time 10 years ago on a study trip at my university and met the love of my life here. So thank you for that. And yesterday we returned to Moscow after 10 years and I asked her to marry me and she said yes. So Moscow is really important to me and my love life. So thank you for having me again in this beautiful city. I'd like to tell you something about how you can build a loyal audience, which I think is really important in this day and age of Facebook that we have heard the previous speaker talking about. It's something I want to keep talking about as well, and how you, as a slightly smaller publisher, probably than Build, can build a relationship with your audiences. And I'm going to base that on my own experiences with the Correspondent, which is a Dutch online journalism platform. We're ad-free. And I'm one of the co-founders, I'm the publisher. And basically what we do is we try to be an antidote to the daily news grind. So every day we're fed with hype news, there's always a new scandal, there's always a new hype. And it can, at some point you can get overwhelmed and you don't know how the world works anymore, you just get all the news about the incidents. But what we try to do is we don't cover the news. We feel enough people already cover the news. And we try to write about the developments that aren't that spectacular, but probably do have a bigger influence on your life. So to give you an example, we don't write about the weather, but we do write about climate change. So we write about the stuff that happens every day instead of just today. Because news is always about the exception, and we try to write about the rule. We do this on a completely digital side. We don't have a print edition. It's just all digital, and our site works at every device. And because we have a completely digital publication, people often ask me, why do you still call yourself a publisher? Because you don't have a truck, you don't have any printing presses, you don't sell any ads. So why would you still call yourself that? And I'd like to share the answer to that question because I think it's important to all of us in media. Because I think my job as a publisher now is to look for the virtual equivalent of a newspaper that ends on your doormat or on your porch. And this used to be a really powerful ritual because every day you'd have a physical reminder of your subscription to a newspaper. And these days, if you're an online medium, you don't have that anymore. You have to fight to get people's attention, and it's an even harder fight to become a daily habit of them, to become part of their media rhythm. So this used to be a really big luxury, that you had a physical reminder of your subscription. And I'm looking to find a digital equivalent of this, so a way to get into the daily habit of our people. So that's basically my job. You could also phrase it slightly more pessimistic. You could also phrase my mission as not ending up as a content provider for Facebook. We already heard a lot about it this morning, but I just want to add that Facebook is a really important source of information and news, just as Weekcontacten, I assume. And the problem with this is it's really easy to get reach through Facebook. So in the Netherlands, we have a country of 16 million people. We often have a reach of 2 million people, 2 million Dutch people. So that's 1/8 of the population we are able to reach to Facebook. So it's not hard to build a big reach through Facebook, but it's really hard to build a connection with readers after they've met you through Facebook. So we are really focused on how can we turn those Facebook visitors, how can we turn them into loyal subscribers? And that's what I want to discuss with you, and I want to share my mistakes and my lessons learned in the process of doing this in the last couple of years. But before I do that, I just want to give you a short history on how the Correspondent came to be, because I think it's important to know this as part of our mission. So we started a couple of years ago, 3.5 years ago. My co-founder, a journalist and philosopher, we both were working at the same newspaper, and we got promoted to important jobs at a ridiculous young age. So I was 24 when I was head of internet there, and he was 27 when he became editor-in-chief of the morning edition. So the board gave us a lot of faith, and we could try to, basically both of our missions were to make journalism relevant again for our peers, for people who have the same age. And this went well until we both got fired and we were on the street and looking for a new gig. And then we decided we're going to start our own journalism publication. We're going to do something we believe is worthwhile in this new media age. And we wrote a manifesto outlining 10 points that we thought is important in journalism. For example, we're ad-free. We wanted to be completely funded by readers. We wanted not to cover the news, but really help you understand the world around you. And we published this manifesto, and we said, if we can find 15,000 people who are willing to give us 60 euros, so that's 4,100 rubles, or more, then we have 900,000 euros, and we can start building our journalism platform. So we built our own crowdfunding site, and we went live. And to be honest, we were a bit pessimistic whether we would reach this goal, because we wanted to raise more than $1 million. And a couple of months before that, the world record in crowdfunding was for the first time broken. The Pebble Watch, which is a smartwatch, was the first crowdfunding project that raised more than $1 million. And this was a couple of months before we wanted to do the same in this really tiny country, the Netherlands. So we figured our odds 50-50. But we went live, we announced our plans on a very well-known talk show. And to our astonishment, I will translate the next slide for you. To our astonishment, we reached 50% of our goal within 24 hours. And this Dutch word means unbelievable. And I'm texting that to my colleague. We were both amazed that it went so well. And after a week, 20,000 people gave us 60 euros, and we could start building our site. And I remember I was ecstatic that we reached our goal until the next morning. And I thought, oh shit, now we really have to build this. So we went to work, we launched this September 2013, and now it's 3 years later, and we have 48,000 paying members and 45 people working for us full-time. And basically, all our efforts are geared towards how we can build a connection with our audience. And if we don't, then we basically will fail, and because people won't pay for our journalism anymore. So these are the advices I want to share with you this morning. I will discuss them all. And I think the first one is that we are ad-free and see ourselves as a service. The second one is that we empower our readers to be our ambassadors. The third one is that we start a relationship at the first visit of a new user, and we involve readers in our journalism. I'm going to discuss all of these advices with you, and I hope you can apply them to your own media business or your own journalism ideas. So the first one, we see our journalism as a service. So the old business model of journalism is publishing something, get a lot of views, and then sell advertising. So that means that your most important stakeholder are your advertisers. We, on the other hand, are completely dependable on our readers. So these are our revenue sources of 2015. And as you can see, 85% of our revenue comes from memberships. So 85% of our revenue comes from people paying for our journalism. Then the other parts are a speaker's agency, a book publishing, and donations. So if you combine them, more than 90% of our revenue comes from consumers paying for our journalism. So we are completely dependent on them. And that's why we act like a service, because if they don't like what we provide them, what we give them back for their money, they will cancel their subscription. And by doing that, we decided to stay out of the ads race to the bottom. So we don't have any advertising, and we will never have any advertising. It's part of our founding principles of the company. And we decided that because, first of all, advertising is a really bad business model in media if you're not pursuing a grand skill. So we don't have the skill, for example, of build. And then advertising is a terrible, terrible business model because, as we've heard already, 85% of the mobile ad revenue goes to Facebook and Google. Those are US numbers, but most of the other countries have similar patterns. So when it comes to display advertising, almost all that money goes to Facebook and Google, and their advertising products are insanely good, and we, as a newspaper, could never compete with the targeting tools, for example, that they offer. So what's left for media who don't have a big scale is branded content or native advertising, which basically comes down to allowing companies to buy articles on your website. So as a company, you can say, I want to publish an article about this new product launch. Find one of your journalists, write an article about it, add a little label saying sponsored, and by doing that, you basically can buy editorial space. Out of every research done to native advertising, the same result comes. Most people don't recognize native advertising as advertising. That's why it works, of course. And after they've been told that it's native advertising, they feel fooled. So we don't want to think how far we want to go in fooling our audience. We don't want to publish articles just for revenue's sake. We just want to inform them in the best possible way. And I can tell you, if you don't have any advertising and are completely dependent on readers, it's completely liberating, because the only question you have to ask yourself is, are we servicing our readers? Are we informing them in the best possible way? So I think more journalists should see themselves as people who provide a service to readers and really think, am I adding value to the reader's life? Am I informing him or her in the best possible way, instead of, am I getting attention by posting a clickbaity headline? Second of all, our readers are our ambassadors. So right after we started building the site, we had to discuss whether we wanted to have a paywall or not. Because, well, a paywall is logical when you have subscribers, because otherwise, why would you pay for it? But then we soon decided, no, we're not going to have a paywall. At least, we're going to have a very leaky paywall. So if you go to the correspondent.nl, you do see a paywall. There's just a marketing page asking you to sign up. But if you have the link to an article, you can always read it. And we felt we had to do that because every reader, if a reader finds an article interesting, he or she wants to share it. It's just a need that we have. So if you build a paywall, reader will find a way to share that article anyhow. They might copy-paste the text, or they might make a screenshot, or they share their login credentials. And we didn't want to fight that urge of our readers to share articles. We figured, let's make it work for us. So let's find a way that we can use that urge to share articles in our benefit. So what we did, we basically came up with a digital version of our paper clipping. If you're a member and you like one of our articles, you can just share it on Twitter, on Facebook, or on Telegram. And then it says at the top, if you're not a member, you can't see the comments, you can't navigate to another page, you can just read the article, and on the top it says, this article has been shared with you by paying member X. So you know that someone paid for it, someone made it possible for you. And this has been our biggest source of new readers still, of new subscribers. Most people sign up because a friend or a family member shared one of our articles. So I want to really advise you, if you're in the media business publishing articles, figure out ways how readers can promote your stories, and in such a way that other readers will know someone else paid for it. The third one is that we try to build a relationship with new visitors from the very start. So we've been discussing this catch-22 situation enough, I think. We have, for Holland, big follower numbers on both Facebook and Twitter. But at the same time, it's a threat, because if people just read us through these platforms, why on earth would they sign up for a subscription if you can just follow us for free through these media? So we need them for the reach, but we just see them as a gateway to subscriptions. So every time a visitor comes to our site, we think about Alec Baldwin in the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, when he talks to a room of salespeople and he says, always be closing. That's how we see Facebook or Twitter visitors. We always think about ways how we can turn them into a loyal visitor. And first we did that in a not so successful way. So we started doing this. We showed a pop-up saying, welcome dear visitor, here's an article for free. If you want to receive a weekly free article, subscribe here. And this was like a general newsletter that you would subscribe to, and every Saturday you would receive a free story. Well, the conversion rates on that newsletter were terrible. So we had around 60,000 people on that list, more or less, and every week 50 people would sign up, which is, I mean, I'm really glad those 50 people signed up, but the other 59,000 people just enjoyed the newsletter and didn't subscribe. So we came up with a new way of making a connection with our readers, and that's by making the journalists more important. Because it's easier to build a relationship with a journalist than with a publication, because it's more personal, and probably the journalist covers a topic you find interesting. So now we switched to personal newsletters. Almost every author has his or her own personal newsletter, and they basically treat it as a public notebook. So they share interesting books they've read, they share transcripts from interviews they've done, they share their travels, they announce the stories they're going to write on. So as a reader, you can really follow their research process, and you can email them back, you can have a conversation with them, and this turned out not just a great way to find new subscribers, because the conversion rates on those newsletters are way better, but also it fostered a relationship between existing subscribers and journalists, because they were in contact and they were in continuous personal contact. And this really feels like you're working together with the journalist. So these personal newsletters have become really important to us. We also organize events on Facebook saying, this is a yearly event, an annual event, and we call it Likers Become Members Day, which sounds better in Dutch, by the way. And we just urge our Facebook likers to become a member. We show them how we will spend their subscriber money. So we show them this pie chart saying, well, we will spend more than 50% to people writing articles, and we will spend 8% on photography and illustrations. And by really showing them, without you, journalism can't exist. Without you, we can't monitor the powers that be. People understand why it's worthwhile to sign up. So we really turn it, again, into a service they have to follow to maintain a good democracy. And then there's other ways that we find new readers. We find them offline, so we publish books and we have events. And I told this to a friend of mine who studies at Harvard Business School, and he said, oh yeah, that's the Walt Disney model from 1957. And I was like, okay. I had no idea this was been around for half a century. And this is basically the Disney model. You should definitely look it up. So they put Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck in the middle, and then there are all these divisions around that studio. So they have, for example, a music department, or the movie department, or the theme parks, and all these divisions help each other. They all add value to each other. For example, the music division gets promotion through movies, but at the same time, the music division helps the movies by keeping them in people's minds. Because if you play the CD by The Lion King 2 years after the movie is released, you still think about the movie. So definitely look this up, because even though it's 50 years old or 60 years old, it really is a really modern model for media to foster relationship with users, not just online, but also offline. So that's why we publish books, and in every book there's a bookmarklet saying, this is a book by the Correspondent. If you want to read more, here's a free code for a free month membership. And we now have 2 books in the Dutch bestseller list. We have a speakers agency for our correspondents, and we organize monthly events in theaters throughout the country. And then 800 people show up, and it's a way for us to build a connection with those 800 members. So it's not a matter of skill, but more a means to build a connection with them. So, and the last thing I'd like to share is the most important one, and that's that we actually involve our readers in our journalism. Because every reader is an expert at something. So every reader knows something either through their job, or through their study, or through life experience. And we try to involve that knowledge in our journalism, because the technology now enables us to do that. So 1,000 doctors who read our site know more than one correspondent healthcare. So what we do is that we see our journalists as conversation leaders and our readers as contributing experts. So we publish every story idea. So every time we're going to write a new story, we announce that story, and we say, this is what I want to research as correspondent healthcare, for example. He wanted to research bureaucracy in healthcare, and he asked our readers, are you working in healthcare? Let me know, and share your experiences about bureaucracy in healthcare. And then there's a conversation going on. They're sharing tips and experiences. This is another example with Shell employees. And in our comment section, our readers are sharing their knowledge every day. and then we give them the opportunity to have an expert title so they can show why they are an expert. And in the end, this leads to stories that are better informed, because we not just include the opinions of opinion leaders or lobbyists or PR people, we also include the opinion of people on the floor, on the work floor. And that not leads to better journalism, it also leads to a really good relationship with our readers. So these were my 4 advices, how you can build a loyal relationship with your readers. And I have good news for you as well. If you read English, we do publish some of our stories now and then in English, so you can look them up on this side. And please let me know what you think and how our brand of journalism could inspire or could help you. And thanks so much for having me here and for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much for your great speech. We have time for one question, and actually I have an advice for you and a way to increase your subscription base. The best way to understand the principle of the Correspondent is to subscribe, which I did this year. I canceled my subscription in a couple of months because I don't reach Dutch. But I understood the principle of the website, and I think it was, and it is great. So we have time for one question.
By the way,
Anybody?
If you email me, I can give you a free month, so you can see the whole site without having to pay for these Dutch articles. My email is ernstjan@thecorrespondent.com.
So any questions? Yes, please.
Thank you for your presentation. Congratulations on your engagement. My question is about your 10 points in manifesto. What were they?
The other 10 points. So this is like a test. So we're ad-free. We're completely digital. We see our readers as partners. We don't. 95% of our revenue always go back into the company. So we don't have a high profit margin because we feel all the profit should go back into the company. We don't want to write about. We don't want to write about in a sensational way. We want to help people understand the world instead of just getting their attention. And we want to be constructive as journalists. So we not just want to point out this is bad or this is not working. We also want to discover how we can fix it. And then there are a couple of more. But I can send you an English translation. There's an English translation on thecorrespondent.com of our manifesto.
Okay, thank you very much again. Thanks
you
for coming to Moscow.
Thank you.